The first thing Dr. Amelia Harper noticed about the Zalorians was their silence. They didn't talk much, at least, not in a way that made sense to humans. The silence was thick, filled with an unspoken reverence that reminded her of ancient temples, places where the old gods sat in judgment of mere mortals. And there they were, the Zalorians, standing in front of her classroom, in the most sterile and clinical manner imaginable. Their pale, almost translucent skin seemed to glow faintly under the fluorescent lights of the university's science building. They didn't have eyes like humans did, just smooth, reflective surfaces where eyes should be. That made it impossible to know what they were thinking. "You'll be our first human participants," said the lead alien, whose name was Zarly, through the universal translator embedded in their throat. His voice sounded flat and impersonal. "The test will provide invaluable data on your species' ability to endure toxins." Dr. Harper raised an eyebrow but said nothing. She knew this wasn't going to be a simple experiment. It never was with these advanced alien civilizations. The Zalorians had already made it clear that they had come to Earth as part of their Galactic Academy's cultural exchange program. But more than that, they were here to test humanity, to judge it. And they had no expectations that humans would perform well. The alien race was technologically superior, having mastered the art of genetics, chemistry, and biotechnology. Their ships traveled faster than light, and they had conquered the secrets of many, many worlds. And yet, they considered humanity an enigma. They had read the data on human survival capabilities and intelligence, but they couldn't help but see Earth's species as fragile. A species that had barely scraped through a few hundred years of space exploration and faced extinction numerous times in its history. A species that had no business being on the same stage as galactic powers like the Zalorians. That was about to change. "I will introduce you to the experiment," Zarly continued. "You will be provided with a list of substances. These are toxic to most species in the galaxy. We expect humans will fail this task miserably, as they have failed so many others in the past." The Zalorians were nothing if not direct. Dr. Harper took a step forward. "I'm sure you've read about our species' ability to adapt. You might be surprised by how well we handle adversity." Zarly inclined his head slightly, though it might have been a sign of mockery. "We will see." The students, all eager to begin the test but nervous about what was to come, shuffled nervously behind Dr. Harper. A mix of emotions flickered across their faces: curiosity, skepticism, and a tinge of fear. They were all aware that this was far from a normal science experiment. These aliens weren't here to grade essays or conduct a simple chemistry test. They were here to push humanity to its limits. And the students were the first humans they'd chosen to examine up close. Jax McAllister, one of Dr. Harper's brightest, but most reckless, students, broke the silence first. He raised his hand, looking amused by the whole situation. "So, how exactly do we get to the death part of the experiment? Do we just eat something toxic, or do we have to figure it out on our own?" He flashed a grin that conveyed both nervous energy and the unshakable confidence of a person who never quite took anything too seriously. Jax's comment drew a quiet chuckle from the others. They all knew he was doing his usual thing, trying to make light of a potentially dangerous situation. But Dr. Harper wasn't laughing. "Let me explain the process," she said, her voice firm. She turned to the Zalorians. "You want to test humanity's resilience, and you believe that consuming toxic substances will show us at our weakest." She raised an eyebrow. "But you've never encountered humans up close before, have you?" Zarly's response was measured, though a hint of impatience leaked into his tone. "We have studied humans for millennia. We know what you eat, what you consume, what can hurt you. The list we've provided will include substances that have brought even the most resilient species to their knees. This will be the final test of your species' durability." Dr. Harper's smile was small but confident. "You haven't studied our ingenuity, though. That's where your test is going to fail." Zarly's smooth face gave no indication that he understood her challenge. He simply waved a hand at the display screen behind him, which flickered to life with a series of images. "Here's the list," he announced. "We expect no human to survive all of them. You may try only one at a time, and the first person to fail will terminate the experiment immediately." The list appeared on the screen in front of them. Strange, almost incomprehensible names of substances, chemical formulas, highly poisonous plants, substances known to be fatal to most species. Some were liquids, some solid, others gaseous. Each had been carefully selected based on known data from the Zalorians' extensive galaxy-wide research into toxins. Lila Patel, a more cautious student, took a sharp breath as she scanned the list. "These are lethal," she muttered. Jax wasn't worried. He smirked and elbowed Lila. "Lethal to someone else. You're forgetting we've got a few things in our favor." He glanced around at the group. 1. We're smarter than most creatures out there. 2. We've survived way worse than a few toxic chemicals. And 3. He glanced at Dr. Harper. We've got a teacher who's seen it all. Dr. Harper sighed, a hint of amusement in her expression. "Let's not get cocky just yet, Jax. We'll go through this step by step. Our survival doesn't come from just being smart. It comes from our ability to think quickly, adjust, and adapt." The students exchanged uncertain looks, but they trusted Dr. Harper. She was their leader in this strange new experiment, and they were determined to prove the Zalorians wrong. Zarly took a step back and folded his arms. "Begin when you are ready." One by one, the students approached the table where various samples of the substances lay, each labeled with an unfamiliar scientific name. Jax grabbed the first sample, a small vial of liquid, without hesitation. "I'll go first," he said, eyes gleaming with excitement. "Let's see what this does." The students gathered around, all eyes on Jax as he carefully uncorked the vial. Dr. Harper stepped forward, giving him a warning glance, but there was nothing she could say to stop him now. With a flourish, Jax took a sip. For a moment, nothing happened. The Zalorians watched, their reflective eyes fixed on Jax's every move, expecting a dramatic reaction. But Jax simply grinned and licked his lips. Tastes like burnt rubber," he said, making a face. "Is this supposed to do something?" The Zalorians were silent. Their sensors scanned Jax, and their collective disbelief was palpable. For a moment, no one moved. Dr. Harper, barely holding back a smile, glanced at the Zalorians. "Do you see? Humans don't die from a little discomfort. We push through it. Adapt. It's what we do." Zarly seemed taken aback, and the weight of the test shifted. The Zalorians weren't prepared for this. They had expected failure, not a nonchalant response to one of the deadliest toxins in their catalog. "Interesting," Zarly muttered, his voice softer now. "We will monitor you further." Dr. Harper didn't look at him. She simply nodded at Jax. Next. The first test was over, but the real challenge had only just begun. End of Chapter 1. The silence between the humans and Zalorians lingered, heavy and unnerving. The Zalorians' lack of any discernible emotion, no smiles, no shock, left the human students feeling exposed. They weren't accustomed to such impassive observation, particularly when they had just defied every expectation. "Interesting," Zarly repeated, his voice low, as he observed the human students. "You seem capable of tolerating more than we anticipated. But this was only the first sample. Proceed with caution." Dr. Harper took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. Her gaze flicked to Jax, who was busy making light of the situation by pretending to wipe his lips with a flourish. "You okay?" Lila Patel, one of the more cautious students, asked him. She couldn't hide the unease in her voice. "That was unsettling. You just drank something that should have killed you." Jax shrugged with an exaggerated grin. "Just another Tuesday. Besides, I've had worse stuff in my college coffee." He paused and gave Lila a wink. "It's not a big deal." Lila wasn't convinced, but she had no choice but to trust Dr. Harper's lead and follow the challenge. Still, the sense of anxiety lingered in the air like static electricity. The next substance was placed on the table, a dark green paste in a small, ceramic jar. The Zalorians handed it to Jax, who eyed it skeptically, knowing this wasn't going to be a simple taste test. The label on the container read Zargoth root, an extremely poisonous substance native to a planet the Zalorians had visited years ago. This particular root was known to cause rapid neural degeneration and if ingested, would likely leave the victim catatonic within minutes. "Let's do it," Jax said, eager to prove himself once again. Dr. Harper shook her head. "Jax, let's think this through. We don't know the exact effects this one will have. You're pushing your luck." But Jax had already dipped his finger into the jar and tasted the paste. His grin stretched even wider as he wiped the residue from his lips. "Tastes like licorice. Pretty bland, honestly. I thought it was supposed to be more intense." The Zalorians immediately sprang into action, their sleek, glowing instruments scanning Jax for any signs of physical distress. A few moments passed in silence before Zarly stepped forward. "You've ingested an unknown substance, but there's no immediate sign of harm. This is perplexing." Jax simply shrugged. "I told you, we humans have this amazing ability to deal with stuff. You guys only seem to think we're fragile. We're not." He turned to Dr. Harper. "What's next, Doc? You said there was more." Lila's stomach churned. She wasn't sure how much more of this she could handle. "Are you sure we should keep going? I mean, he's right. We're fine now, but we don't know what could happen later." Dr. Harper nodded, her eyes narrowing with calculated precision. "We'll be cautious. But the purpose of this experiment isn't just to survive. It's to understand what makes humanity resilient. We can't back out now. If we show them that we have the will to survive, we've won." Jax was already reaching for the next sample, a small vial containing a shimmering liquid. Its color was a deep violet, almost mesmerizing, and it glowed faintly under the overhead lights. This one was called Serenox toxin, an alien substance known to cause cellular breakdown and rapid decomposition in most organic life forms. Even a small drop was supposed to be lethal within seconds. "Here we go, a real challenge," Jax said, uncapping the vial and letting the liquid swirl in the light. "Jax, no," Lila said, her voice pleading. "You need to stop doing this." But before anyone could stop him, Jax tilted the vial back and down the entire contents in one swift motion. The Zalorians reacted instantly. Their faces remained expressionless, but their technology hummed and buzzed as it began tracking Jax's physiological changes. Dr. Harper moved toward him, her hand already on his shoulder as she scanned him with the diagnostic device she'd brought. A tense few seconds passed. Then something unexpected happened. Jax gave a small cough, and the violet liquid began to bubble from his mouth. But instead of collapsing, he stood upright and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. His cheeks were flushed, but there was no sign of any fatal collapse. "I think I'll survive this one too," he said through gritted teeth, although it was clear he was starting to feel the effects. "Not the most fun I've had today, but I've seen worse." Lila looked like she might faint, but Dr. Harper was calm, as always. She turned to the Zalorians. "You expected this substance to kill him within seconds. We just proved that humanity can survive what you believed was a certain death." Zarly remained silent, but his expression, if it could be called that, was unreadable. He motioned for his assistants to check their monitors more closely. For a moment, there was an almost imperceptible flicker in his smooth face, as if the Zalorian mind was scrambling to process the unexpected. "You are resilient," Zarly admitted, though his voice lacked any true awe. He glanced at the other Zalorians, speaking in their native tongue. The hum of their communication devices filled the air, and their faces, if you could call them faces, remained unchanged. Dr. Harper was taking the moment to get a clearer scan of Jax's vitals. "He's going to be fine, but the aftereffects may be harsh. I suggest we take a break for a few minutes before continuing." That was a lot for his body to handle. "No breaks," Zarly insisted, his voice firm. "If you are truly resilient, you will be able to handle much more." Jax, still dazed but determined to push forward, gave a half-hearted salute.
"Fine.
Let's keep going. The weak human's routine is getting old." Lila watched in disbelief as Jax practically bounced on his feet, his brashness unwavering despite the toll the toxins were clearly taking. She turned to Dr. Harper, seeking reassurance, but Dr. Harper's expression was contemplative. "Remember," Dr. Harper said, her voice quiet but strong, "the goal is to show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't just survival, It's the ability to adapt to any situation. We don't fold under pressure. We find a way through. The next substance was a clear, crystalline powder. It sat in a small glass dish in front of them. This one, the Zolorians explained, was called throxin dust, a neurotoxin known to cause paralysis in less than 2 minutes after exposure. It was a tool often used in galactic warfare to immobilize enemy soldiers without causing long-term damage. Lila's eyes widened. This one's the real deal. Jax, we need to stop. But Jax didn't listen. He was already reaching for the powder. I'm game. You don't have to do this, Jax, Lila said desperately. But he just winked at her and sprinkled the dust on his skin. Immediately, his movements became sluggish and his legs buckled. But rather than crumpling to the floor, Jax gritted his teeth and tried to fight through the paralysis. His face contorted with the effort, and his hands clenched into fists as if willing his body to move. For a few long moments, it seemed as if the dust had done its job. But slowly, Jax began to fight through the paralysis, his limbs twitching and then moving again. I can't stop, he muttered through clenched teeth, his breath coming in gasps. And then, slowly, Jax forced himself back to his feet, defying the effects of the neurotoxin. The Zolorians were silent, and Dr. Harper's gaze softened with pride. Human adaptability, Dr. Harper said, speaking for them all. It's in our nature to keep pushing, to survive. The Zolorians said nothing, but the weight of their disbelief was unmistakable. End of Chapter 2. The second Jax staggered to his feet, his body still shaking from the effects of the throxin dust. The Zolorians' machines went into overdrive, scanning him in quick succession. The air was thick with tension, and Dr. Harper was barely able to contain her own unease. Jax had managed to fight through the paralysis, but there was no guarantee he wouldn't collapse in a few minutes. The effects of the neurotoxin were unpredictable, and humans had no experience with it. The Zolorians, however, seemed unfazed by Jax's recovery. They had likely seen many species struggle against their toxins, but the fact that humans could, against all odds, adapt to each new challenge was starting to gnaw at them. Jax, still reeling from the effects, turned to Dr. Harper, offering a half-smirk. Told you it wasn't that bad, he rasped. Just a little tingly. Lila Patel shook her head, visibly unsettled by the entire situation. You're not just a little tingly, Jax. You are almost paralyzed. How are you even standing right now? Jax's grin never faltered, though his usual bravado seemed to be slipping. He leaned against a nearby table for support, his hands shaking slightly. I told you, Lila. We're built to survive this stuff. Just give me a minute and I'll be back to normal. Dr. Harper nodded, still scanning Jax's vitals with her handheld device. We need to give you a break, Jax. You've pushed yourself too far already. The Zolorians have clearly underestimated us, but that doesn't mean we should keep testing our limits recklessly. Zarli, who had been watching the whole scene with a mixture of curiosity and growing suspicion, finally spoke up. His voice, as always, was a matter-of-fact monotone. It is becoming increasingly clear that your species is more resilient than we anticipated. But we will not allow you to continue indefinitely. Our experiment is meant to test boundaries, not test your survival in an endless loop. Proceed with the next substance. There is no time for further delays. The calmness in his voice only heightened the sense of pressure on the human students. They had already defied the expectations of the Zolorians, but something told Dr. Harper that they hadn't yet faced the true heart of the challenge. There was something far more dangerous at play here than just the substances they were being forced to ingest. With a deep breath, Dr. Harper turned to the next sample, a clear, viscous liquid that shimmered under the bright lights of the lab. The Zolorians informed them that this substance was called cithrin, a highly potent substance capable of breaking down human cells at a microscopic level, liquefying tissue within minutes. It was used in various galactic prisons to extract confessions from unwilling subjects, often with irreversible damage to their physiology. Dr. Harper felt a cold shiver run down her spine. This one wasn't a challenge. They were facing something deadly. Deadly. They couldn't afford to play with this one. Lila took a cautious step back as Zarly handed the vial of Cithrin to Jax. I don't think we should, she started, but Jax, despite the lingering effects of the neurotoxin, simply waved her off with a careless gesture. I'll handle it, he said with more confidence than he felt. His gaze locked with Dr. Harper's, and she saw that familiar fire in his eyes, the same fire that had carried them through every other challenge. He wasn't about to back down now. Dr. Harper nodded reluctantly. Remember, Jax, we need to survive, not just push forward for the sake of proving a point. Jax uncapped the vial and sniffed the liquid. His face twitched, and for the first time, the bravado faltered. This smells like death, he muttered under his breath. But he didn't hesitate. He took a deep breath and drank the entire contents. As soon as the liquid hit his stomach, his face went pale, and his breathing became shallow. He staggered back, dropping the empty vial, and clutched his stomach, gasping for air. Lila screamed, her voice shrill with panic. Jax. No. The Zalorians remained impassive, their machines beeping steadily as they took readings from Jax's body. But Dr. Harper's heart raced in her chest. The Cithrin was meant to break down human cells, and even with their resilience, Jax was no different from any other human in this regard. There was no way his body could survive this kind of onslaught without extreme intervention. Jax's hands were shaking violently, and his breath came in desperate, ragged gasps. But then, something remarkable happened. His pupils dilated, and his body began to rearrange itself. The toxins within him, while wreaking havoc on his body, seemed to trigger a strange response, as though his cells were working overtime to counteract the damage. Dr. Harper's mind raced. Could it be? Could human biology really fight back like this? She quickly activated her own scanner, analyzing the data pouring in from Jax's vitals. The readings were unlike anything she'd ever seen. His cells were actively repairing themselves, almost too quickly, as though they were learning to fight the toxin as it spread through his bloodstream. Hold on, Jax, Dr. Harper whispered, but her voice was barely audible over the hum of the alien machines. Jax groaned, but his hands stopped trembling. His posture shifted from being hunched over in pain to standing upright, slowly. The next few minutes passed in agonizing slowness. The Cithrin was still working on his body, breaking it down at a cellular level, but Jax was fighting back. His body was learning, adapting faster than ever before. Dr. Harper, Zarly's voice came again, this time with a hint of urgency. This is not possible. The Cithrin is. Just wait, Dr. Harper interjected, her mind focused solely on Jax. She could feel the tension in the room. The Zalorians were becoming unsettled. This was far beyond what they had planned. It was almost as if Jax's body had recognized the threat and began producing antibodies and cellular enhancers at a rate never before seen in human physiology. With every breath, his systems seemed to regenerate, replacing damaged cells faster than the toxin could destroy them. His skin regained color, and his movements became steadier. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Jax took a deep breath and stood tall. His face was pale, but his eyes were sharp again. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked directly at Dr. Harper. Guess I made it, Jax said, his voice hoarse but with that familiar cocky edge. This is getting old now. The Zalorians were frozen in disbelief. They had anticipated that the Cithrin would be the final test, an obstacle that would crush humanity's chances of winning the experiment. Instead, the human had adapted, survived, and emerged unscathed. Zarly's expression remained unchanged, but Dr. Harper could see the flicker of uncertainty in his stance. For the first time since the experiment began, they were facing a species that refused to succumb to their expectations. You, Zarly began, his voice softer now, less authoritative. You are truly something else. Dr. Harper didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned to the students behind her. Lila was still shaken, but the others were starting to understand that the rules of the game had changed. Humanity wasn't just enduring the tests, they were rewriting the playbook. Let's take a step back, Dr. Harper said, her voice calm but filled with purpose. We've shown them what we're capable of. But the real question is, How much more are we willing to sacrifice to prove our resilience? Jax glanced at her, his eyes flicking over to the Zalorians. Don't worry. We've got this. I'm ready for whatever they throw next. But deep down, Dr. Harper knew that the real challenge had only just begun. The Zalorians had underestimated humanity's will to survive, and that was something they would regret. End of Chapter 3. The tension in the room had shifted. Where once the Zalorians had been confidently administering test after test, their calm demeanor began to crack. It wasn't just the tests that had thrown them off, but the growing realization that humanity wasn't just enduring, it was winning. Jax stood there, his chest rising and falling with each breath, still reeling from the effects of the Cithrin, but now steadier than he had been a few minutes ago. Dr. Harper surveyed the room, watching the Zalorians confer amongst themselves, their voices low and incomprehensible in their native tongue. The instruments they used were humming with strange, pulsing energy, as if even their technology couldn't quite process what had just happened. Lila Patel, the most cautious of the students, turned to Dr. Harper, her voice trembling. Dr. Harper, we're not really done, are we? They've still got more tests. We've only survived so far by sheer luck. Dr. Harper's eyes narrowed. It's not luck, Lila. We're not just surviving, we're adapting. That's the difference. Humans don't fold under pressure. We find a way out. She took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. They were about to face the final challenge, what the Zalorians had called the last trial. But Dr. Harper knew it wasn't going to be just another test of endurance. Something more was coming. As she turned to the Zalorians, Zarly, their spokesperson, straightened up, his glowing skin flickering in a way that could almost be described as discomfort. You have passed the previous challenges, Zarly began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. Survived what we deemed lethal. But we underestimated your species. So now, the true test. Dr. Harper exchanged a look with Jax. Her stomach knotted, a silent warning flaring in her gut. They had pushed their bodies and minds to their limits, but the Zalorians were known for their ruthlessness. Whatever came next would test more than their physical resilience. It would challenge their very souls. True test. Jax scoffed, brushing himself off. I'm ready for anything they throw at us. Bring it on. Zarly waved his hand, and the lights in the chamber dimmed to a low, ominous hum. The Zalorians' technology shifted, and the walls seemed to dissolve, revealing a view of an alien sky, dark, foreboding, and swirling with cosmic energy. The ground beneath their feet seemed to pulse with an alien presence. This is not a test of toxins or physical endurance, Zarly continued, his voice now carrying the weight of finality. This is a test of human resilience. A test of your will to sacrifice. What you value most will be the thing you must give up. We shall see how far you are willing to go. The room seemed to grow colder. Dr. Harper's breath caught in her throat. Her mind raced, trying to understand what was happening. The Zalorians had been playing a game of survival, but now they were flipping the script. The last test wasn't about surviving the impossible, it was about losing something they couldn't live without. Jax's cocky grin faltered as he looked at the strange surroundings. What the hell is this? This isn't one of your samples, Zarly. What's the real game here? This is no longer a game, Zarly replied coldly. This is the true trial of humanity. Do you understand the cost of survival? Before anyone could respond, a loud, rumbling sound echoed through the room. The ground shook as massive, floating platforms began to descend from the ceiling. The platforms were covered with strange, alien symbols, symbols that seemed to pulse with an unnatural power. Dr. Harper's eyes locked onto the platform closest to them. On it was a single figure, an alien life form, bound and unconscious, surrounded by a field of shimmering energy. What is this? Lila whispered, her voice a mixture of dread and confusion. Zarly's voice echoed once more, low and final. This being is from a world that humanity has never encountered. They are a representative of a species that poses a significant threat to the entire galaxy. A threat you will soon understand. But here is the trial. If you wish to continue surviving, You must choose between your lives and the lives of others. The realization hit them like a tidal wave. Dr. Harper's breath caught in her throat. The alien before them was not a mere test subject. It was a prisoner. And the Zalorians were offering them a choice. The prisoner's fate was tied to their own. They could save the prisoner, which would mean sacrificing themselves, or they could sacrifice the prisoner to ensure their own survival. Jax took a step forward, his gaze never leaving the alien figure on the platform.
Wait.
You're asking us to kill him to live? You want us to choose that? Zarly's voice grew colder. Not kill. Let him go. Do nothing, and his species will be freed to ravage the galaxy. A species known for their cruelty, their desire to destroy all other races. If you choose to save your own lives, his kind will go on to destroy countless others. Your decision will shape the future of the galaxy. Lila turned pale. This is insane. You're asking us to play God. Dr. Harper's mind raced. The philosophical weight of the decision hit her with full force. This wasn't just about saving themselves. It wasn't even about survival. This was about morality, about understanding the true price of life. Jax, we can't, Lila started, but Jax interrupted her with a sharp gesture.
No.
We can't let them get away with this, Jax said, his voice steady, but tinged with the weight of what was about to happen. This isn't a test of survival anymore. It's a test of what we stand for. And what we stand for is life. Dr. Harper felt the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. The Zalorians were right. This was no longer about resisting their challenges. It was about deciding what kind of species humanity would be. Could they truly sacrifice an innocent life to save their own? You're right, Dr. Harper said, her voice stronger than she felt. We've been tested in many ways, but now we're being tested on the very thing that makes us human, our ability to make the hard choices. We may not know this prisoner, but what we do here will define us. She stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the bound alien. The Zalorians were watching with a mixture of curiosity and, dare she say, expectation. I choose humanity, Dr. Harper said quietly. I choose to protect life, not just ours, but the lives of others. We're not going to let this being suffer for our gain. Zarly's eyes narrowed, clearly taken aback. He had expected them to choose the easy path, survival at all costs. But then, Jax stepped forward beside her, his gaze unwavering. I'm with Dr. Harper, he said, voice steady and resolute. We're humans. We don't turn our backs when it matters most. We'll make our stand. Lila, shaking but resolute, joined them. I'm with you too. The room fell silent. For a moment, it seemed as if even the Zalorians were holding their breath, waiting for the next move. Zarly let out a deep, almost imperceptible sigh. You have made your choice. The shimmer around the alien prisoner faded, and a strange hum filled the air. The Zalorians' technology powered down. The platforms began to recede back into the walls, and the once ominous atmosphere softened. You have passed the test of humanity, Zarly said, his voice now laced with respect. Your species is far more than we believed. You are capable of more than just surviving. You are capable of true compassion, something many of us have forgotten. Dr. Harper's heart skipped a beat. They had done it. They had passed the ultimate test, not by surviving, but by choosing something greater than themselves. The Zalorians bowed their heads in acknowledgement, their respect for humanity clear. They had expected to break the human spirit, but instead, they had been forced to recognize its strength. We will leave you in peace, Zarly said. Your species has proven its worth. Go forth and teach others that there is more to strength than survival. There is something beyond. Humanity has passed its trial. End of Chapter 4.